In the 2005-06 NBA season, the Western Conference was a bloodbath, and the standings were really weird. Take a look. And no, I didn't make any mistakes here. The Denver Nuggets were 44-38, yet they were still able to grab the third seed, even though they have the same exact record as the 8th-seeded Sacramento Kings. This was because back then, the three teams that had the best record in their own division were guaranteed to be a top 3 seed, and the Nuggets had the best record in the Northwest Division. This unorthodox playoff bracket created some interesting situations. In the first round, the 6th-seeded Clippers easily knocked out the Nuggets in 5 games, while the 5th-seeded Grizzlies got demolished by the 60-win Mavericks, who were the 4th seed. The Spurs and Suns won their respective series as well, as they all moved on to the second round. This sets up the stage for an incredible second round series between the Mavericks and Spurs, the two best teams in the conference. Well, the Suns were great too, but in 2006, Stoudemire was injured, so the team was crippled. Anyway, how's it going, fellas? My name's Andy, and today we're gonna take a look at a legendary playoff series that nobody ever talks about anymore. In my opinion, the 2006 matchup between the Mavs and Spurs was the greatest second-round series of all time. This series featured two future Hall of Fame power forwards going head-to-head in their primes. There was a lot at stake. The rivalry between the two teams was at its peak, and reputations were on the line. First things first, coming into this series, the Mavs have never beaten the Spurs during the Dirk Nowitzki era. Dirk and the Mavs lost to the Spurs in 2001 and 2003, where he injured his knee. But now, Dirk is surrounded by the best team he's had in his entire career and ready to get his revenge. The Spurs, on the other hand, just won the championship in the previous season, and they were looking to win back-to-back titles for the first time in franchise history. And of course, they were led by their big three of Duncan, Ginobili, and Parker. The Mavs had their own big three of Dirk, Jason Terry, and Josh Howard, and they led the team to the #1 offense in the entire league. This series was a battle between the #1 offense and #1 defense in the league, and that's always fun to watch. So it was weird seeing the two best teams in the conference facing each other in the second round. Usually it should be in the conference finals. For comparison, the combined record of the Spurs and Mavs was higher than the combined record of the two teams in the finals that year, the Mavs and Heat. Alright, so let's get to the actual series. In Game 1, neither team looked good offensively, and it was a slugfest, especially in the fourth quarter. Fortunately for the Spurs, they had the amazing strategy of throwing the ball to Duncan and letting him abuse Eric Dampier. Duncan finished the game with 31 points and 13 rebounds, and you'll notice this kind of performance became a trend every single game. Duncan actually averaged 32 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, and nearly 3 blocks per game for the entire series, which was insane, and this was statistically the best playoff series of his career. Dirk and Jet both struggled, shooting a combined 14 for 38, and the offensively dominant Mavs looked nothing like they did in the regular season. The game still came down to the final possession, but Jerry Stackhouse missed the game-winning 3, so the Spurs won 87-85.
Dirk had the ball, he's dunking on the double team, spots Stackhouse, and Ginobili got a piece of that. Stack gets the ball, deep 3 for the win, no!
Game 2 was the most lopsided game in this series. The Mavs built a 20-point lead at halftime and ended up winning the game quite easily, with Josh Howard, Devin Harris, and Dirk all scoring at least 20 points. It was as good of a game as they hoped. Everything went perfectly. Duncan still got his 28 points, but the Mavs defense focused on limiting the play of their perimeter players. Parker and Ginobili were non-factors in Game 2, partly because of Devin Harris, who played great defense on Parker. The 23-year-old Harris had the best playoff game of his career. Coach Avery Johnson inserted him into the starting lineup in place of Adrian Griffin, and it was a great move. Johnson said, "We thought we played a game pretty much our style. The pace of the game was a lot better than the pace in Game 1. A lot of that had to do with Devin being out there." In Games 3 and 4, the series shifted to Dallas, and the Mavs won 2 hard-fought games by a total of just 6 points. In Game 3, both teams were choking near the end. The score was 103-104 in favor of the Mavs with 8 seconds left. The Spurs had possession and the chance to win, but Ginobili lost the ball and turned it over. Then on the other end, they had to intentionally foul, so they fouled Jerry Stackhouse, who missed both of his free throws. So the Spurs had another chance with 2 seconds left, but Robert Horry missed the game-winning shots, and that was it. In Game 4, it was also really close throughout, and Duncan had a chance to win it, but missed the game winner, so it went into overtime. Eventually, the Mavs pulled it off again and now have a 3-1 series lead. In a post-game interview, Duncan was visibly upset at the officiating near the end of the game. He said, "One play either way, one call either way, whatever it may be, it came down to that." He still had an incredible game though, recording 31, 13, and 6, but for the Mavs, Dirk and Terry combined for 60 points. Heading back to San Antonio down 3-1, the Spurs were perplexed, but they felt like they were still in the series. The last 2 losses in Dallas were really close, and like Duncan said, just one play could have made the difference between a win and a loss. So in Game 5, it was yet another close game. Dirk finished with 31 and 10, while Duncan had 36 and 12. The Mavs had a chance to win the game and the series at the buzzer, but Bruce Bowen made a ridiculous defensive play, blocking Dirk from the back and forcing a jump ball. The Spurs won the game 98-97, and after the game, Dirk was asked about the block and he said, "I didn't see him. He made a great defensive play. I probably could have up-faked one more time and possibly created more separation, but give Bruce credit. He blocked me from behind and that was a great play." And also, in another turn of events, after Game 5 was over, the league offices reviewed the final seconds of the game and found out that Terry threw a punch at Michael Finley, who was also his former teammate. Terry got suspended for Game 6, which was huge, since he's been the Mavs' second best player in the series. This caused a huge controversy, and Mark Cuban stepped in too. He defended Terry by saying that Michael Finley does a pile driver with his hip to Jason's head while he is on the ground. Jason is on his back with Ginobili laying on top of him. No question he tried to get Finley off of him, and he should be fined for that, but to suspend him is questionable. If that's a punch, Jason certainly didn't get his money's worth. If his hand would have been open to get Finn off him, we wouldn't be having this conversation, but the fact that his fist was closed when he reacted to him, they call it a punch. So yeah, this was crushing news for the Mavs. They needed Terry to win the series. In Game 6, it was another grind fest. The Mavs put up a good fight and Dirk recorded 26 points and 21 rebounds, but without Terry, they just did not have enough offense. They scored just 86 points and lost the game, and now the series is tied at 3 games apiece with Game 7 in San Antonio. In the final game, the Mavs and Spurs went back and forth, with neither team being able to get an edge over the other. After Dirk tied the score up at 104, the Spurs had multiple chances to win the game, but they could not capitalize. They missed a few point-blank shots, and now we're headed into overtime.
Down to 4, down to 3, Ginobili squeezes through, Duncan on the follow, the shot blocked, and we go to overtime.
Now, at this point in the game, Duncan was just dominating. He had almost 40 points and the Mavs had no answers for him at all. They were on the verge of blowing a 3-1 series lead and losing to the Spurs again. However, just as they thought it was over, a ray of hope just appeared out of nowhere in the form of 24-year-old center Sagana Diop. Up until this point, Diop barely played any crunch time minutes in the series and averaged only 2 points per game in the regular season, but it was his defense on Duncan that saved them from elimination. The unsung hero stopped Duncan in the post for 3 or 4 straight possessions and held him to just 1 for 7 shooting in overtime. The Mavericks finally pulled off the win after Dirk's buckets. They won the game 119-111, almost blowing a 3-1 lead, but a win is a win. Dirk beat the Spurs for the first time in his career. Looking back at the series, it was incredible how quick and agile Dirk and Duncan were when they were younger. Granted, they did age really well in their later years too. This series also directly caused the NBA to implement a rule change for the playoffs. In the following season, they decided to change the playoff format so that division winners were only guaranteed a top 4 seed instead of a top 3 seed. This was to make sure the 2 best teams in the conference would not face each other until the conference finals. Which makes sense, having 2 60-win teams going at it in the second round is pretty insane. And then later on in 2015, after the playoffs, they removed the rule entirely because Portland got the 4th seed. So now division winners are not guaranteed to make the playoffs, so if a team is at the top of their division, it doesn't really matter. Honestly, they should probably just remove divisions altogether. I don't see the point of them. Anyway, that's all folks. I hope you enjoyed that video. Let me know what you think about this series and what other series do you think are not talked about enough. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.